Hey, this is René, welcome back for another video on this channel. Today I want to talk a little bit about strategy development because this was also requested very often in the comment below my recent videos. So what we just saw here is another backtest of the range breakout expert advisor that I use a lot in the German stock market index, and I was testing this strategy again because currently in my accounts I only use this range breakout expert advisor with long trades only, but I feel like it can definitely also be profitable if you include the short trades. So this is why I wanted to do some more testing, and this is so far the outcome of my testing process. So let me tell you exactly what my steps are and what I look for when I do testing and optimizations, and I want to give you a little bit of an insight into my thought process and what I look out for if I want to use a new strategy, for example, also in live accounts. So first of all, let's have a look at the strategy itself. It is a range breakout expert advisor strategy that I use on different accounts of mine, like FTMO projects, live trading accounts. It's one of my most used programs, and the backtest that we just saw was for the last 10 years. But now I also want to start a new backtest for the more recent months only, so you can see how the program works. So what we do here is we run the program in the DE40, which is just the German stock market index. You can use any symbol you like, but of course you would have to do testing and optimizations for other symbols because the strategy behaves very different with different symbols. This is what I already figured out, and the same settings will not work for different symbols, at least not in my test. So if we have a look at the quick at the inputs here real quick, we can see there are some inputs. I made this version a little bit smaller for faster backtesting, but what we can see here is the risk that I use here is 1% based on 50,000 for every single trade. For my testing programs, I like to do it like this. So I do not calculate the risk based on the equity or balance, for example, because this will impact the performance. And if the more recent years or if the first years in the test are very, very good, the overall performance might be a lot better because of the percentage calculation based on the growing equity. And this is not what I want. I want a more realistic look at this. So this is why I choose the same money as a base for the whole test for every single trade, because I do not know, like if we have a look at the graph here, for example, I could have started trading live at this point or at this point or at this point. You never know at which point pretty much you start trading a strategy live. So this is, in my opinion, why it is a good idea to try to create the same environment or conditions for every theoretical starting point. Like whenever I would have started in or throughout this performance graph, if we have a look at the x-axis, the performance from this point on would have been the same because I use the calculation here based on a fixed amount of money. Then I do not use a take profit, but I do use a stop loss. It is a factor of 1, so the stop loss is at the other side of the range. Then for time starting hour, I choose 8 AM and 1 minute. This 1 minute is because I feel like it gives me some sort of security or gives me a better feeling if I do not choose 8 o'clock, because sometimes if you really go spot on these fixed hours like 8 o'clock, sometimes there's a bit more movement, like on round numbers. If there's a new 1 hour candle, maybe there are news or something. So I like to just go a little bit off these really important numbers, like the new hour mark, because I feel like this could reduce slippage. And slippage is something that is a very dangerous variable when it comes to testing and then taking the strategy and putting it on a live account, because in the tester, slippage from my experience is never really displayed realistically. So this is why I try to sneak in stuff like this, where I just go off by, let's say, 1 minute or 5 minutes to give me a better chance to create realistic backtest without that much slippage. Then the time for the range is here 210 minutes in this test, but in the optimizer, this was something that I wanted to figure out, of course. How long should the range be? And in a second, I will show you how this looks then in the tester. Then I close positions late in the evening, and I do a maximum of 1 buy or sell trade. So just 1 trade per day, which is the first breakout pretty much. And then I do have a range filter here. So if I run this now in the visual mode to show you how the strategy works, I will explain exactly how it is done and how every trade is calculated and then placed and managed. So what we can see here is let me fast forward so we can see the first trade. There it is already. So what we have here is we do not see any visuals in the chart. I removed this piece of code from the expert advisor to make it also faster and more efficient for backtesting. So what we can see here is we created a range, and the range is taken from the inputs pretty much. So from 8:01 in the morning, we take 3 hours and 30 minutes. So from 8 to 11:30, and this is our range. So I don't know if I can put an object here. I think I cannot put objects in the tester, but yeah, we can just do it with a crosshair here, I think. So from 8 here pretty much to 11:30, which should be here, we create this range. So this is our range, like from up here to down here. And then when we have a breakout out of this range, and in this specific expert advisor, actually I do not work with stop orders, but instead I wait for the first 1 minute close below this range, which happened here. So you can see the lowest point was at 11:18. This was the lowest point. And then the 11:36 candle closed below the lowest point. And then I entered the short position. I do not use stop orders in this specific expert advisor or for this testing also, because I feel like if I wait for the close of a 1 minute candle, this also reduces the risk of having a lot more slippage in a live account compared to the tester. Because here I place the position, or I open a market position immediately with the opening of the next 1 minute candle. So I do not work with stop orders for the entry, because stop orders always bring a high risk of slippage in the live account that you do not really see in the tester. So this is when the position is opened, and then the stop loss is at the other side of the range. So this is the stop loss factor of 1 from the settings. So we can see it here, stop loss factor is 1, and this is why it is at the highest point of this range, which was here at 10 o'clock. So from 8 to 11:30, we did not see any higher point. So this is why this is the stop loss for the position. And the lots are calculated so that we would lose 1% on 500K. I mean, here it's actually a bit more, because I think, wait, what's the calculation? Yeah, it might be a bit more. Maybe I calculate the risk based on the range low. I will have to check this after the video. But yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. So if we speed up the process here a little bit, we see this trade was now closed here at the position closing time at 20:55, I think. And that's pretty much it. So this is what happens every single day. So you can see the next day was a loss. The next day was also a loss. The next day was also a loss. So 3 losses in a row. And this is, of course, a strategy that works with a rather high risk reward ratio. So we are aiming for high profits in the best case, and we might have a hit rate that is below 50% for this reason. So you can see every single trade, there's a maximum of one trade following these exact rules. So I could do a lot of tests like this now in the visual or non-visual mode to figure out how the strategy would turn out if I use different settings. But this makes no sense, obviously. So this is why we want to use the optimizer. And this is what I did next. So after figuring out that my strategy works, like technically, and that everything is fine in the strategy tester, there are no bugs anymore, then I usually just use the optimization. And I made a total of 3 optimization runs so far. This is the last run that we see here, but the previous runs were a little bit different. Like, to show you my thought process, if we go over these settings, I want to tell you what settings I would test first and why. For example, the time frame for the range calculation, this has no impact on the actual performance, so I would not optimize this at all. Risk percent, this also has no impact on the actual performance, so I would not optimize this. Because as I explained before, the risk is always calculated on the same amount, so it does not make a difference. I mean, it will increase the absolute profit or loss, but it would not make a relative difference. Like, it would always be the same performance graph. The profits would just be higher or lower. Then the TP factor. This is something that you could optimize, but from the past I already know that for the range breakout strategy, usually a TP factor of 0 works best. So if I do not work with a TP. So this is why I did not optimize the TP factor. The stop loss factor is something that you could optimize, but in this case, I also did not optimize this, because to me it just makes sense that if you base your trades on this range, it makes sense for me that if you trade like a breakout or 2 breakouts, it makes sense to put the stop loss on the other side of the range, because this is your initial idea, right? That you trade the breakout from this range and that this move should then continue and not break the range on the other side. I mean, this was the idea for this testing process that I did. So this is why I also did not optimize the stop loss factor. Then I definitely optimized the time for the starting hour, the starting minutes. So here I go, I pick the hours from 8 to 11, and I pick the starting minutes 1 and 31. So these are 2 runs. So you can see I do not try to optimize on every single minute, because this for me would be over optimization for sure. But instead I pick, like, let's say the full hour or 1 minute afterwards and every half hour. This is why I go here from 1 and why I use 1 and 31 as the starting minute, and for the hour I go from 8 to 11. Why from 8 to 11? Also in my more previous backtesting runs, I also included the hours from 6 to I think 13 or something. And this is also a more narrow time window already. But I wanted to include the hours that are relatively early during the day. So the trade, if it opens, still has a lot of room to produce high profits, because the initial idea of this strategy is to open trades that can run for a very, very long time throughout the day. So this is why I want to enter early, so I can catch the biggest portion of this actual move. So this is why I try to find early hours for the entry in the best case, but also I don't want to go too early, because if I would open positions before 9 a.m. I think on this with my broker, I pay a lot higher spread. So this is why I set up the test so that the range never ends before 9. Because if I would open positions before 9 a.m., I would pay a spread which is, I think, 8 times higher than the spread that I pay after 9. So I really, really watch the spread and the costs in general for my trades. And I want to have the lowest possible trading costs. And I usually, for this reason, only trade during the hours where I do get the lowest spread during the day. Or otherwise, if there's a good reason to trade with a higher spread, of course, I would do it, but for this specific expert advisor, I do not see a reason. So this is why I wanted to get the range, which is early in the morning, but not that early that I pay the higher spread. And then one important factor is, of course, the length of the range in minutes. I work with the length for the range in minutes here, because if I would use the time for the range end in hours and minutes like I do for the position open time, I would have to optimize more parameters. And if I just use it like this, I only need one parameter, which makes optimizations more efficient. Actually, when I think about it, I should also do the time for the start in minutes, starting from midnight. But this is another story. So then I have the close parameter, so I can decide if I want to close at the end of the day or not. This is something I did not optimize because it does not make sense to optimize it if I do not use a TP. So I have to close the trades based on time, because if I don't have a TP, I would never close them otherwise. So this is, of course, why I did not optimize this. Then we have the time for the closing hour. This is something that I did optimize in my first optimization runs to figure out if it makes a huge difference when I close the trades in the evening. In my more recent backtesting runs, I figured out that it does not make too much of a difference. This is why in my last optimization run, I did not optimize it anymore, and I just decided to go with 20:55 in the evening. Then we do have the trade frequency. This is something that I did optimize in my previous runs. I tested the max trades parameter here in my optimization runs, and I tried to figure out if it's better to only trade the first trade or the first two trades. And in my previous optimization runs, I figured out that it is better to just trade the first trade with this strategy in this symbol. And then I do have the min range and max range filter here. In my more previous optimization runs, I did not optimize this because this would just be too much optimization runs. So in my first optimization runs, I just tested the times here, the closing time, and also the max trades. This was in my first runs. And then in my last run, my run that I can also show you the results here, I also tested now the min range and the max range. So I did this in a separate optimization run because I feel like everything up here, like the time for the range start, the time for the range end, how many trades, this is very, very essential, and it's the base pretty much of the strategy. So this is why I tested this in the first run, and I feel like the filters are more, they should not make the whole strategy. They are just really just a filter. So if I can increase my performance a little bit more with useful filters, then I definitely want to do this. But I don't think that it is part of the main or overall idea. It is just to maybe make the test more stable or make it more realistic to replicate the backtesting results in a live account. For me, for example, it makes sense to not trade the two small ranges or the two big ranges, because the two small ranges, again, have a high chance of a negative slippage event that will have a huge impact on your account. And the two high ranges are maybe also not what you want to trade, because it doesn't happen often, and it is just on specific occasions, usually combined with news. So also on my PC here, I had, for example, after my first optimizations, I made some backtests. For example, this was a backtest where I used the range from 10:30 and then to 2 hours, 10:30 to 13 o'clock, and closed at 20:55 in the evening with the first trade traded only. So you can see the performance was looking like this. I was not super happy with this because the most part of the good performance here was actually in the more in the years starting from 2015. So this is not 100% what I'm looking for, because I think that I would like more of the performance in the more recent years, because I want to have a strategy that works now and not in 2015. But still, this was not a bad backtest. I could definitely imagine using this in a live account, because for me, it is important that over a long period of time, you have a high chance to be profitable. I don't care if I make, like, not in the first place. I don't care if I make 100% or 10%. If it is profitable and I feel like the strategy is somewhat stable, I might include it in my portfolio. Then I did another test here, another test so I can see, a single test so I can see the balance in equity. Here I had slightly different settings. I traded from 10 to 12.30 or from 10.30 to 12.30 and closed at 20.55 in the first trade only. And yeah, you can see here this was looking a little bit better to me actually, because the performance was more stable in the last few years. And I really have a look at the balance and equity graph then with my own eye, and I try to figure out how stable does it look, because I think the balance and equity, it tells a lot about the strategy. And then also what I also did is I figured out that, for example, in all of these tests, I had a more or less break-even period or even slightly losing periods in the years from 2017 to 2019. So I then also opened the chart of the symbol that I trade, and I tried to figure out, was this a long sideways period, for example? Why did not the EA make profit? And I try to explain this. So for me, as I always try to say in my videos, it's super important that the strategies are logical and that like the outcome of the strategy kind of fits to the underlying that you want to trade. But yeah, after these first test runs, I then did the last test run that just finished a couple of minutes ago. So in this test run, yeah, I already explained why I used, let's say, the fixed closing time here and why I did not optimize this, and why I used the max trades of 1 here and why I did not optimize this anymore. But then I included the range filter. And this has shown the optimization results that we see here. We can also see the little dots here in the graph, and we can see I have a total of a little bit over 900 passes, 900 combinations that were tested here. And then I like to have a quick overview first over the testing results. And what we can see here is that the first thing, which is a great thing, we have a lot of positive results. Like most of these tests were actually profitable. And this shows to me that like whatever setting I use, even if I do not pick the best results, the chances that I make more money than I lose are good, I would say. And this is, again, this is important for me. I want to have a chance to win more than I lose. And yeah, so this is a very good sign if you see a lot of positive results and less negative results. And then I also have a look, of course, also at the top ranks here. But actually, what I don't really look for is the actual best result here, because this has a range filter here, which is very selective. So with the best result, we only trade the ranges that are greater than 0.45% and 0.6% of the market price of the underlying or the symbol that we want to trade. And this is, in my opinion, very selective, and it can also work in the future, but we do not have the highest amount of trades here. So the statistical relevance, if we can call it this, with backtesting results is not super high. So what I like to see is more a result like this, or this, or this. So where we can see at least, like, let's say, close to 100 trades or more per year. Because from my feeling, this has more relevance then, or it's more, it has more statistical relevance. And yeah, also then I realized that I also have a look at these factors a lot, like the drawdown, the recovery factor, and the Sharpe ratio. I want them to be actually kind of high. And maybe one of the most important factors for me is also the recovery factor, because this means that your... Wait, why do I have this test now? Yeah, because I just did the test here. What I like to see is a good recovery factor. Let me do another test here in the background again. With the settings that I would now use most likely in a live account. And yeah, so I try to find outcomes here or test runs that have quite a decent amount of trades. So I'm not looking for the best possible profit factor necessarily. If it is the best profit factor, that's fine, but I don't really look for the best and just choose the best outcome blindly, because this is, after all, it is a backtest. It cannot predict the future. I mean, we can assume that in the best scenario it will go on similar like this in the future, but we never know. So this is why I do not just blindly pick the best results. And then I also, of course, check the inputs that I would use to, let's say, for example, get this result here. And I figured out like the range now is a little bit different than the range that I used here. And these backtests here always went from like 10:30 to 12:30 or 13 or like 1:30 p.m. or 1 p.m. And now in my latest optimization run, it's more from 8 to 11:30. So the range is slightly different, but this is maybe because of the range filter. And yeah, this is kind of okay-ish. But we can see like the ranges from 10:30 to let's say 12 or 13 o'clock or 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. It still works kind of fine, even if we apply the range filter. But yeah, with the range filter, it seems to be a little bit better to trade even earlier during the day. And as I explained before, I'm totally fine if I open the position earlier, because I feel like this gives the trade also more room to breathe and more room to generate a higher profit on this specific day. But yeah, so that's pretty much how I like to optimize and test. And then if I see results like this, where I feel like, okay, this worked pretty good in the strategy tester, and then I don't want to overthink everything now. If I find a result like this, where I feel like this could work out, actually, I think at this point I'm good to go with these settings. I would use them. Because what else can I do? I mean, I can do more optimizations. Wait, why did this happen so fast now? Yeah, but I mean, I could do more optimizations. I could maybe find better settings in the tester. But you always have to remember, like the tester, like from this point on, if you trade this in live account now, the testing results, they do not matter. What really matters is that you have a strategy that has a good fundamental idea that it follows, and it is important that you believe that this idea could be profitable in the future. And then in the end, it's always trading. So in the end, it is a gamble if you trade highly leveraged strategies. So you can try to find a good foundation for your live trading, and I feel like this here, like this result with this strategy and these settings, this might be a good foundation. So I would just give it a run, and then you can start with a lower risk in the beginning, and then just trade it for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, and then you can see how it goes. And after the first few months, you want to make a comparison of your live trading results to the backtesting results, and if everything is still in line, just trade it. And just trade it. If you do not over leverage, and if you do not risk too much money that you cannot afford to lose, then you can just give the strategy a little bit of time. Like 1 year or 2 years, it's nothing. As you can see here, sometimes you do have 2 or maybe 3 years where nothing really happens. And then sometimes you have 1 year where everything happens. And you never know when this 1 year will happen. So you really have to, you really need this long breath and just see how it goes. And also, let's have a look at the backtesting results here. These are just some key figures. And we can figure out that the profit factor is 1.22. For me, that's totally fine. But as I said, the profit factor for me is not the most important thing. Then we do see we, of course, lose more trades than we win. This is also because of, we do have the stop loss, but we don't have a TP. So this is usually like this. And then you can have a look at this a bit, but usually this is not too important for me. Like the closing hours and the profits, it's kind of like given by the settings that we choose. I mean, of course, the profits are only made in the evening because it's the only point in time when positions can be closed in profit. Then we do see, we trade all of the weekdays. There's not really a relevancy here, and I do not see a reason for why one weekday should be better than another one. So I would just trade this strategy throughout the whole year, every single day. Also, if we have a look at the months, for example, we can see that, for example, November was negative here, but if I cannot explain it logically why November should be negative, I would not include a filter to not trade November, because it makes no sense to me, actually. I like, for me, it's super important that it makes sense overall. And this is a little bit an insight in my thought process of what I do, like the steps that I take when I develop new strategies, and that's pretty much it. And I hope you liked it. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think this is a logical process? Do you have any more questions about this? And otherwise, if you don't have any questions, I hope you liked it. That was it. I'm out. Have a great time. Good trades. Bye.